here's what I would say about Cenk's response. It's telling, right? Like, I become one of the 3 guys on a panel. Your entire main show is 3 people on a panel. Like, so like that weak shot was absolutely crazy. Like, talk about projection. The main show on TYT is 3 people on a panel, and he called clickbaity 3 guys on a panel. First of all, you were super involved. Cenk was super involved with Bernie's campaign, so you have to know the guy in the middle, who is Marcus Farrell, who was the political director for Bernie's first campaign. You have to know Ben Dixon, because Ben Dixon was on your network, and you damn well know who I am.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it was a few months ago. You told me I should put my name on the ballot and run for president. Cenk, you would vote for me. You said that. So this idea that I become 3 guys on a panel is absolutely disgusting. But the problem is that didn't even bother me as much as Anna going into full Karen mode when she was like, I'm so tired of the left. She said it right there. We became the other. I'm so tired of the left. I'm not dealing with them anymore. I'm not giving them space. They come on our platform and we make them big, or we make them, and then they try to leave and go somewhere else. And I'm thinking to myself, who did you make? Who did you birth?
With all that being said, Gavin, it does look like our special guest has arrived. Do you have anything to add before we introduce the mayor of Enfield, North Carolina, and former TYT contributor, Mondale Robinson?
Super excited. All I have to add is that I'm, genuinely excited for this conversation. We haven't ever spoken with Mayor Robinson on the platform, so I'm super excited to hear not only his insights, obviously, into this TYT situation, but also his gig as mayor of Enfield. That's a very interesting subject. I'm excited to hopefully get his thoughts and perspective on, as well as just his opinion on the state of America today as we face down a second Donald Trump administration. I'm sure he's going to have a lot of great insights for us, Zach. But yeah, let's welcome the man to the van.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on our show today, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about, but I figured a great place would be if you just tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Mondale Robinson, and I'm a mayor, but I'm a different type of politician. So let's couch that. I'm a progressive first, and I started Black Male Voter Project about 6 years ago after doing political consulting work at the international and national and statewide a little bit level. And Black Male Voter Project is the nation's first organization to engage Black men who don't see themselves in the political space, meaning, college educated or high earning Black men. So the majority of Black men in this country. And we try to organize all 9.6 million of those brothers in this country. Doing that work introduced me to a lot of people in the progressive space. I also was the political director for what Howard Dean's campaign became at DFA, Democracy for America. Did that for, probably about 30% of my adult life, helping candidates get elected at every office level. So when people be talking about, what it means to be a progressive on the left doing this work, I've been doing it for quite a while. The world didn't know me until I tore down a Confederate monument as mayor in Enfield, North Carolina, which is my hometown, where I went back to live to run for office because of gentrification. So let's do it.
Well, yeah, that's a great place to start, I think, Mayor. And again, really appreciate you joining the stream. Do you want to talk a little bit about the experience you had after those monuments came down and the sort of harassment that you experienced? Not just you, but I think your entire family experienced in the wake of that, giving you a lot of direct experience with the very people that your former employers, Cenk and Anna, want to coddle up to or befriend.
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, as someone who is from the South, I'm a native rural country boy in North Carolina. And if you know anything about the state of North Carolina, it's a long state. It's about 9 hours long if you're talking about the width. And I'm from the eastern part where most of the plantations were. And right now, today, still, it's where a majority of Black people, percentage-wise, live in the state. So we are a rural state. We have a lot of small towns. And what we found out was doing research, the mayor that I ran against, Wayne Anderson, was from New Jersey, and he was selling Enfield off to his friends. One of his friends bought like 40 properties in 1 year, and they was getting it for the cheap, building houses that my people couldn't afford, that they were calling affordable housing. And I had to come home and do something about it. And when I did that, I also remembered like the stories of this white only water fountain that was in the park that was attached to this 10-foot tall marble Confederate statue that flew under the American flag with this beautiful poem to whiteness, basically. And I knew the first thing I wanted to do as mayor was get the town board to vote on us removing it. And instead of spending $30,000, $40,000 on that statue, I had to figure out a way to get rid of it. So I tore it down myself. And when I tore it down, I did not account for how white whiteness was. And the Loyal White Knights, which is one of the largest chapters of the Klan still today, issued the ode to that the white people needed to stand up and take back their town and their history and their heritage and do something to me. So I started receiving death threats, got doxxed, and still to this day, more than 2.5 years, I've not stepped in my bed because of those death threats, because they're still a constant right now in my life.
That's, I mean, that's fucking crazy to hear about. Obviously, so sorry to hear about that and that experience that you're having, you know, to this day. I think a lot of people might have a little bit of a misunderstanding when it comes to North Carolina and not know how deeply entrenched it is as a Southern slave state.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally, you know, when you're dealing with online masses of people, that there's obviously going to be these incel, you know, wannabe Klan members, you know, the white nationalists and neo-Nazis that want to watch stuff like Nick Fuentes. But you almost forget that there is also the old guard. There is still, you know, the Klan members. Like, there are people who literally wake up in the morning and think about going to be in the Ku Klux Klan and other, you know, white national hate groups. I guess if you know, what does the left need to be doing better as a way of addressing that? Because I think we're all guilty of, I mean, I speak for me and Gavin and the people that we spend time with, of almost thinking about it as something of the past.
Yeah, I think we pretend on the left a lot of the times. We spend a lot of time pretending that things got better and now they're getting worse again. We have to first acknowledge that nothing ever changed in this country. Right? If you look at the time when lynching was the way that you put black men in their place in this country, from the 1800s to the mid 60s, we've lost more black men probably in the last decade from cops killing, and we're not talking about lynching as if it's not a real thing, still constant in our lives. So people have a misconception about North Carolina, partly because they believe that North Carolina was this progressive South, because North Carolina banned after the Confederate, they banned wearing masks. But they didn't stop the Klans from marching. They just made the Klan march with their face open. So there was never a scared Klansman in North Carolina. These people were outright. People forget that the way that we police in this country has its origin in North Carolina slave catchers. North Carolina slave catchers became the first police department in this country. So I think I come from a long history of people just forgetting what people that are other minorities, LGBTQI folk, people that are living through. And I think because on the left, sometimes we get caught up in fighting our own side, plus the Republican side. We forget that people really are living through this, and it's not just a Twitter retweet match. It is real life that people are suffering, right? And I think for me, the constant has always been, I know what my dad went through, and I see him right now as a broken older black man. In what people are calling his golden years. I see the effects of white supremacy not just on him, but on his kids, me being one of them. And for that reason, I'm never willing to forget the trauma that my people went through and are going through. And I think until we stop talking about what was and be reminded that America has never stopped being the white nation that she's always born to be, then we're never going to get serious about kicking people out. That's why I was so on fire about the shift coming from people that I call family. And I think that shift was, to me, not just about clicks and views. It was also about selling out an unspoken code that you took when you took all those checks and all of those billions of views that TYT has garnered over the years. Right.
Well, you know, something that you mentioned in your video on Benjamin Dixon's channel, and then that we reacted to at the time, is like, you know, it almost seems like when Cenk and Anna talk about these things now, they're discussing a sports game or like a poker or something. You know, we'll hash it out with our right wing friends, and then we'll get a beer afterwards. It seems like less and less they're including an analysis about how this actually affects people's lives, how, you know, these policies and these ideologies which they're trying to pander to and befriend, right, these actually have real consequences, specifically on marginalized communities, specifically on Black people. And it's not that, you know, Cenk and Anna will never experience the effects of fascism. They live in this country too, right? But for whatever reason, a lot of people, maybe it's due to a desire to make more money, maybe it's a defense mechanism psychologically, but a lot of people at this point, even though Trump is clearly, you know, representative of a more grave fascist threat than ever before, they want to put their head in the sand and they want to almost act like, oh, it's actually less serious than ever. It's less important than ever. So clearly that's not your approach, Mayor Robinson. Clearly that's not our approach. But I did just want to offer you the opportunity to kind of share with our audience, at least, and hopefully to the Young Turks as well, if they ever see this, what should the approach be? You know, as we look down the barrel of Trump 2.0, as we look down the barrel of this fascist threat which approaches, what is the correct posture? What is the correct response? How do you embody an effective left-wing resistance? Because, yeah, it's one thing to resist. You can, you know, flail around and cry and scream, but we need an effective resistance this time. I think that's what is important that we talk about.
Yeah, I mean, listen, to me, you know, the lack of fight, or what you call resistance, in Cenk and Anna, what I'm seeing, what I was seeing, and the reason I needed to step away is because I just saw them moving to the right with the rest of America. And that, to me, is never a position that the left has to be in or should ever be in, especially if you're calling yourself the left. Because basically what you're saying is there are some of us that we need to sell out so that we can be comfortable. Like this idea that we can sacrifice the least amongst us so as to have a conversation with those who hate or will never accept Black LGBTQI folk, and even progressive white people don't have a home in those spaces. We see this. We've always seen the John Browns of the world get killed, just like the Black men. So I think this is, for this reason, I think it's nefarious for Cenk and Anna to say that they're not changing, we're changing. No, you guys are sacrificing moral and ideology beliefs to be comfortable and also platform people like Glenn Beck. When you appear on Glenn Beck and you call us religious zealots and compare us to religious zealots, you give not just the right wing, the moderate Democrats, you give all of these people space to say, see, the left are these lunatics who we don't need to be trying to court. We need to be trying to win over these conservative leaning, basically these people who are comfortable with hating some of us. And I think that to me tells me that you have no progressive left in you. And we can't be a resistance if we're willing to sell out anybody that's other than us, meaning I can't stop fighting for trans brothers and sisters. I can't stop fighting for poor white people in Appalachia and Black people in America. Just like poor white people in Appalachia can't give into the ideology that they're somehow being protected by what Trump administration offered, which is just hate of people that are other than you. That was the same thing that broke up the work that Bacon Rebellion created. The reason white people got the right to own guns in their Second Amendment, the reason white people got the right to marry, but Black people couldn't, was because they saw this was a way that they can elevate white people, not without giving them resources or getting them closer to equity, talking about the rich 1%, after the Bacon Rebellion happened in Virginia. So we had poor working, well, they weren't working at the time, they were indentured server, Black and white people together, ready to tear this shit down. And the rich people knew that, hey, if we give these poor white people something to say that they're better than Black people, they can hold on to it. So when people talk about the Southern strategy in Lee Atwater, yeah, he put it in a political place, but it had already been used to break apart for populist movements in Virginia way back then. And I think we don't talk about that enough, and we give off too much. Let me give you a great example. If you look at progressive policies, and this is what they're saying, we are a fringe group of people. But if you take the name off of Obamacare, Americans love it. If you take the name off of universal health care, Americans love it. If you take the name off of universal basic income, Americans think it's a godlike thing. But this idea that we play to Republican talking points and we say things like you call us fringe, or you do the both sideism, where Black people and white people on the left are the fringe and it's equivalent to the right fringe, when we know damn well we are not equal to folk that support Trump. I think you do a serious disservice, not just to TYT the network, not just to TYT the brand, but the entire left. Like when you have so much space, when you suck up so much out the ethos, and then you show up in this manner on Glenn Beck, agreeing with Glenn Beck about who we are, calling us religious zealots. You are, in this point to me, you're a liar, and you're also threatening my life. You're telling Glenn Beck and the lights that you don't need to worry about Mondale. You don't need to worry about Vanguard, Ben Dixon, because those guys are just screaming because we're throwing tantrums. No, we're screaming because you guys are willing to let some of us die for likes and clicks, and that shit ain't cool.
And that is a really important point, Mr. Mayor, that I want to expound on, particularly as it relates to, all of American history, right? You made up such a great historical analogy that I'd long forgotten with the Bacon Rebellion in Virginia, but we've seen it so much more recently. We were talking the other day about how one of the huge red flags when it comes to the Young Turks is their willingness to kind of sell people out, marginalized groups, get in front of the bus because we're driving forward for our own selves. We're looking out for number one. We're looking out for the Young Turks network, and that is completely antithetical to this idea of intersectionality, of uplifting all of us, one of us for all of us. You know what I'm saying? All for one. And I think that it's really worth doubling down on and really examining, because the left has a history of kind of white people on the left, I should say, let's be real, have a history of selling out black people as soon as there's a really good offer on the table for white folks. We saw it in the New Deal. We saw it after Bacon Rebellion. As you said, it was the indentured servitudes of all color that were saying, hey, this is unjust, but okay, well, we could get married now. We're still a little bit better than you. We're poor, but we're not that poor, right? And then that's a way of fracturing the movement. That's a way of breaking solidarity, in the same way that you send scabs in to a striking factory, right? And it's something that the left has to address. And I remember very explicitly during the Bernie Sanders era, Gavin and I were like 17, 18 years old when Bernie first came onto the scene. And we were having a lot of conversations with our friends because there wasn't a lot of trust in this white guy from black people off of the bat, at least in my experience, right? It was like, yeah, I've heard this shtick before. I heard it when it came from Obama. I'm sure shit not going to trust it when it comes from this 70-year-old white guy, right? It was about building that trust and saying, you know what? This movement is about not selling anybody out. And Bernie is the first one to remind people of that. He was like, we're going to fight for people we don't know. He had surrogates of all different races and class backgrounds and religions and all of that kind of thing. He was about unifying us and making sure that everybody knew we were not going to use, minorities or, people of different sexualities as pawns for negotiations at the table, that it was about universal health care, that it was about a Green New Deal for everyone, etc. And now it seems like the Young Turks have completely forgot that lesson and kind of validated all the fears of minority folks.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about what was going on with Young Turks when Bernie was running, you heard a lot of the argument was about the unpopular way in which the establishment left the Democratic Party, basically the moderate Democrats and those who control it, corporate Democrats, how they basically was cheating us in the left in the primary. People know that if you don't win the primary, then you don't have an opportunity to win an election. And what we saw was them using all of the mechanisms that was the establishment, even some of the parties' ways that you're not supposed to participate, to ensure that Bernie didn't win the election. And we screamed about that. The Young Turks screamed about that. And then all of a sudden, now we are bullying the party. How are we bullying the establishment when there are no progressives in any leadership position? Who are you going to tell me a progressive? Jamie? Are you telling me Jamie? Are you telling me anybody in Congress that's a part of leadership team is a progressive? No, we don't have any. The only progressive leaders we have are in the progressive caucus. So the idea that we can bully this big machine, this mammoth of a machine and all of its auxiliaries to do what we say is absolutely ludicrous. But what we do know, though, is that in the face of all the BS they'll tell you is progressives are causing the Democrats the election. They will not tell you that progressives didn't lose on election day, right? When we lost was in the primary that we know they control. When we saw AIPAC spend so much to unelect Cori Bush, a true progressive. When we saw them spend so much to unelect in a primary Jamal Bowman, they're we lose, progressives lose in Democratic establishment primaries, and that's how they want it, because that's how they maintain control. In general elections, we didn't see Ilhan Omar lose. We didn't see AOC with her current problems. We didn't see her lose. We didn't see Rashida Tlaib lose. right now. So this idea that progressives lose, I didn't lose. I ran a crazy progressive campaign. We just unelected a conservative Democrat who had been in office damn near my entire life in the state legislature, and put in a young black man right now. He got beat bad. So I'm thinking this idea of calling us bullies is part of the mechanism of them becoming a part of the establishment, so as to shore up everybody that follows them, meaning TYT. Everyone that follows TYT can transition to being Democratic supporters for whatever this new iteration of the TYT is acting as, a mouthpiece for the Democratic establishment. And that shit scares me. That scares me a lot because, like I said, a billion views is not small. More than 1 million subscribers is not small. And you suck up too much. People grew up in progressive spaces, as you just was explaining, looking at and following what TYT was doing. Now, to sell people out without an excuse or a clear explanation of what's going on, I still ain't heard from Cenk, right? Like, and people's like, oh, he gave you a platform. Cenk didn't give me a platform. TYT did not make Mondale Robinson. Like I said, I was already a political consultant at the national level. I already started Black Male Voter Project, and I was already a mayor when I went over there and started creating content. And I promise you, they make way more off of me and my content than I ever made off of them. You can know that for sure.
Oh, for sure.
So when people say I'm complaining because I want more, if I wanted more, I wouldn't have left. It's not about the money for me. If it was, I wouldn't have left the money. I'd have just sat there. It's about where the hell is the left resistant in what's about to happen. What's about to happen? And they can't say that I don't want us to, because their next argument was, well, you have to agree with them 100%. I don't agree with Shawn Michael damn near anything, but we're close. We argue about everything. I don't agree with Delano Squires about anything. He works for the Heritage Foundation, but we argue. We argue in good faith. They're not showing good faith right now, because what Anna was doing, what Cenk is doing, you're not going over trying to convince Glenn Beck how stupid and wrong he sound. You're going over there blaming the left for losses. That is the exact opposite.
And trying to pick up people in his audience. That's what it's really about. Exactly. They want his audience, and they want his sponsors, the big money corporations that finance his operation. That's what they want at the Young Turks, because they're at this point completely incapable of generating the sort of enthusiastic audience that used to keep the bills paid over there, that at one point in time actually genuinely was a model for how a left-wing business should be run, right? Back in the 2016, 2017 era. And I also, want to bolster a point you made, Mayor. Not only did the left do all right on election day, like you said, Ilhan Omar won, Rashida Tlaib, a lot of the strongest left-wing Congress people got reelected, and at the local levels too. But also a lot of the candidates that downright took Cenk and Anna's advice lost. Colin Elred totally threw trans people under the bus. He ceded to the right-wing framing. Instead of defending that community, he went with the right-wing messaging and said, I don't support boys and girls sports. Of course not. He got trounced. He lost to Ted Cruz by 8 points or so. Kamala Harris, obviously, what's she most known for? Being a cop, and the Democrats went with her as their candidate. They went with one of the most tough on crime candidates they ever have nominated. And again, they lost. So it sounds kind of like they took Cenk and Anna's advice, the Democratic Party. It sounds like they nominated a candidate that was real concerned about crime. And it sounds like all of their candidates at the down ballot level, for the most part, did exactly what people like Cenk and Anna suggest and prescribe, which is to abandon cultural issues. That didn't go their way either. So what I really am interested in your perspective on is someone who does represent folks in a part of the country that Zach and I aren't as familiar with, and that frankly a lot of progressives probably should understand better. How do we reach a lot of these folks? Because obviously Cenk and Anna's message is bullshit. That strategy is never going to work. But I also do think it's fair to point out that there are some folks on the left that also have it wrong when it comes to speaking to people that live in a state like North Carolina or a more rural community, right? You don't want to sound condescending. You don't want to sound like you're lecturing normal people from your coastal castle, telling them how to properly speak or think, right? So what is the best way to reach a lot of these voters and people that could genuinely be moved?
Yeah. Well, here's the problem. First of all, I'm glad you're using the word reach, because that's an important part. What we do know is the way you engage voters before an election, meaning that the years that lead up to a general election or presidential election, means a whole lot. So you need to be consistent in these people's lives. You can't just show up in an election year with your transactional tactics, thinking you're going to move these people. We see a disconnect from the political consultant class, which is basically the class that came in with Bill Clinton, especially on our side. We see a huge disconnect between them and also what's working to turn out voters. America is not good at turning out voters. It's about 60% of people participating in a presidential election, which is absolutely disgusting. And we should feel disgusted by that as a country. But people brag when you have what we call 2020 a high turnout election, and we didn't even reach 70% when some of our neighbors to the south in the Caribbean reached 90% on election day. So I think first of all, we need to be clear that our entire process is flawed because it's so transactional. The transactional nature of politics is completely different. It worked for baby boomers who were 2 and 3 generations removed, and in some cases participated in a world war, or on the black side, 2 and 3 generations removed from slavery. But that ain't gonna work to motivate the majority of American voters now, millennials and people younger than millennials. And I'm super excited about that, because what happens is the fraction of party loyalty. You have a potential Democratic base, young voters, black and brown voters, and other voters that are not basically white men and white people telling America, yo, you need to hear us and not talk at us. So when you say reach, that is the first thing you need to do. We spend too much time on TV, even though we know that majority of voters aren't getting their information from mainstream media, but mainstream media still gets majority of the resources in an election year. What America has shown us is it does not matter how much money you have, you're not going to be guaranteed to win an election. If you look at the last 3 or 4 elections, what we found out was the people with the most money tend to lose elections anyway. So us bragging about Kamala winning, or raising so much money, was a red flag for me. Mitt Romney had more money than Barack Obama, right? Hillary Clinton had more money than Trump, and then Trump had more money than Joe Biden. So this idea that money was enough, it also tells us that the Americans need more than 100 days to on-ramp an idea that a person can be president that they don't have a relationship with. So this short period, I think the Democrats shot themselves in the foot by not telling Joe Biden, you will be a one-term president, and having a real primary. I think they thought they were going to force feed this person because she met a certain demographic for them, right? I'm not saying that Kamala wasn't qualified. What I'm saying is you didn't give the Democratic voters the opportunity to say that she's qualified and we want her. And I think we saw the remnants of that, mainly because we saw so many people sitting out the election. What you saw, especially from black men, was not a rejection of Democratic progressive idea policies. We saw a rejection of this idea that you can tell me in one election that you're going to prioritize on issues, spend the first 2 years of your campaign or your presidency not doing anything to prioritize us, and then all of a sudden expect us to come back out again. So we didn't see black men becoming more conservative. You keep seeing people say, oh, Donald Trump got a higher percentage of black men, but they never say he got a higher raw number of black men, which he didn't. What happened was so many more black men sat out this election. The percentage of black men that voted for Trump just looked higher. There's no increase in black men for Trump, raw to voter wise. Donald Trump did something that nobody's been able to do in the past 4 election cycles: increase white people's participation or percentage of the electorate, even though the white population overall is getting smaller. And he did that using the Southern strategy. He did that using tactics where people felt, right? If you activate the fear of whiteness in racist white people, they react. We've seen it. We saw it. It's American as apple pie, right? Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say it was something that I did not want to see, right? And I think it's something that we have to talk about, because I sat in this chair and I laughed in JD Vance's face, and I laughed at Donald Trump the night that he said, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. I was like, there is no way anybody would buy this. You'd have to be a hateful, black-hearted, fucking, over-the-hedge Klan member. Like, who the fuck wants to see this? Like, how could you ever look any of your friends in the eye after voting for this guy, right? That's where my delusion was, right? And I had to shatter that, because that, to your point, and this is something Gavin said to me like a week ago, no, dude, that was the night he won the election, because all those people saw themselves in him in that moment. And it's fucking crazy to say that. Like, you feel like you're in a horror movie, like you're getting chills on the back of your spine, and not in the good way. When you say that and you realize that and you grapple with that reality, and then it kind of breaks my fucking head open, because I think about the Young Turks turning around and saying stupid shit like, oh, the left doesn't care about crime when it happens to white people. Like, what the fuck is like, it's just crazy. They're out here making excuses for the guy who did an extrajudicial assassination on the subway in broad daylight on somebody's smartphone, right? Crazy. And then they want to talk about how the left doesn't care about crime. You're literally celebrating a public murder, a lynching, if we want to be real about it, right? And it's crazy. And you have this coming from the show that claims to be the home of progressives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, to tether this back to a question that I could throw your way, right? We've seen how Donald Trump has been so effective in his use of media, right? Going back to the early days with Steve Bannon, Breitbart, his way of like kind of building up on the internet and memeing his way into the presidency was very effective. And it was very Obama coded. Obama was one of the first presidents to be savvy with using the internet. Donald Trump kind of flipped it on its head and did it again. It was a huge element of his surge. Obviously there was the free media from MSN, but when he was talking to his base and when his base was talking to each other, it was in these chat rooms. It was on websites like Breitbart.com. And the left has completely failed to do that, right? And we've been examining Cenk Uygur a lot. We've been examining Ana Kasparian a lot. And one of the things that our audience pointed out to us is that there's a through line between Breitbart and Steve Bannon and Cenk Uygur. And it's a woman by the name of Arianna Huffington, who's a billionaire mogul in the media industry. And during the second Bush administration, she became friendly with Cenk Uygur, and she actually kind of set him on the track that, oh yeah, maybe being an Obama style progressive is where it's at. And he followed it right at the time that it was going like this, and it built the Young Turks into a really formidable news outlet. And then he doubled down and he did it again with Bernie Sanders. And now that gravy train is over, he seems like he's reverting back to his conservative views that he held pre-Obama era. My question for you, Mr. Mayor, as somebody who spent time with Cenk, do you think there was ever any authenticity to his ambition to build a true alternative media for the left? Or was it all just him seeing dollars and cents and deciding that this was his path to a get rich quick situation?
Yeah, man. Listen, as I sit and engage myself with self, when I engage myself about me, I question every interaction I have with Cenk, and I have to, because now when I hear you screaming, it's like, wait, are you performing? At this moment, are you performing? Because you notice a lot of the times after the rants come an offer of something, a book or subscribe or pay here and this. And I know people have to eat, and I get that. And like I said, I support good progressive media for sure. But what I don't know is if there was ever a true progressive inside of Cenk. I think he's reading, like you said, he's reading the tea leaves, and his tea leaves are not based on morality or morals or even an ideology. It's just based on dollars, period, dollars. And I think if we really get serious about it, even the idea of Barack being this progressive was a joke, right? Barack was never a progressive. This guy was, Hillary Clinton with a black face, and I don't mean that to be, I don't think he would find it offensive. Barack, I'm talking about. I've never considered him a progressive, and even when I saw people, champion him, I knew what he meant, and I know what he means still to American history in that moment in time. But I also know how far he set us back, right? Barack Obama gave us the Tea Party and also Trump. There's a role in Barack Obama. And when he had the opportunities to do real progressive stuff, he backed back, right? Obamacare is from the Heritage Foundation. It was Mitt Romney care first, right? Yep. It came from Massachusetts. It is not what we were screaming for. And it was not like it was a new idea. We give Bernie a lot of credit for his platform. But if you look at Bernie's platform and go back to 1984 and look at Jesse Jackson's platform, the only thing that's different is Bernie left off Palestine being a state, and we need to recognize it. He also left off reparations, but his platform is everything Jesse Jackson was talking about in 84. So we had the blueprint on how to be progressive, and Bernie was aware of that platform because he was a mayor in Vermont, and he endorsed Jesse Jackson for president. One of the first white people to endorse Jesse Jackson. So this idea that being progressive was this new thing with Barack Obama, no, it was just that it was accepted by certain people and then put away until you got a Bernie Sanders who was, I think the beauty of Bernie was he found a state where he could maneuver as an independent and also speak to Democratic voters as if they were home.
Right. Well, speaking of Bernie, it brings to mind another question. We're obviously at an interesting place right now as a left-wing movement. We're in an interesting place as a country, obviously, but specifically as a left-wing movement, I think one of the only silver linings we can really look at when it comes to the defeat of Kamala Harris and the, re-election of Donald Trump is, it does kind of give us an opportunity to potentially regroup and try to fill the void as far as leadership in the Democratic Party that has been left by the failure of the Democratic establishment, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, et cetera, right? Obviously, if Kamala Harris had won, I think it's, fair to presume that she would be the nominee again in 2028. Now, hopefully, assuming there is an election in 2028, assuming that Donald Trump doesn't go full fucking fascist and shut down democracy entirely, which is a possibility, there will be an opportunity for us to put our best foot forward again, to, persuade the American public to go with a real progressive, to take down MAGA, because honestly, that's what it's going to take. You're not going to take down MAGA with some freaking vice principal, some manager type like a Kamala Harris or a Pete Buttigieg or a Gavin Newsom. No, you need someone that can actually represent the people and call for an end to this bullshit caste system, which continues to oppress so many Americans, that can call for actual systemic reform at a fundamental level that will uplift the people in this country that need to be uplifted. So are you hopeful that will happen? Or do you think that the establishment will come back with a vengeance? They'll install a Gavin Newsom type, a Pete Buttigieg or whatever. Or do you think that progressives, if we unite and get serious, can really seize this opportunity and again, exploit that silver lining?
Yeah, listen, I think it's not like we didn't see progressives in this presidential election. I think what you said is absolutely right. We were so disjointed. We were all over the place. One progressive, Cornel West in particular, had 5 or 6 political parties this election cycle. And I think once we need to get serious about what it means to be the progressive opposition, even to our party. And I think that requires us to get serious about figuring out how we maneuver at the county level, at the state level, talking about with the Democratic committees, and we take over some of those positions, because those positions are how we start feeding ourselves and progressives in the primary and winning some of these primaries where the Democrat are automatically forced to deal with us in general elections because we're the only option. So until we get serious about our strategy around primaries and how we're going to participate and win primaries, then I think we're always going to be on the back heel. I do believe, though, I believe there's some truth in what you're saying about us having an opportunity not to be bogged down for the next 8 years with a milquetoast candidate. I'm not counting on the party. I'm counting on the progressive left. And my joy comes in, or my belief that we'll do something big this cycle and going forward is what I'm seeing, this reaction to Cenk and this reaction to this video. When I left TYT, I feel like the progressives say, okay, this is enough. No, we don't have space for people who are not that we're not a big tent progressive party talking about just the progressive wing. We're not saying that. We're saying that you can't come over here coded. And Cenk and those guys showing up like that, y'all look real coded right now. And I'm super excited about that, because that tells me we're paying attention in a way that the world's not giving us credit for.
Were you surprised at how Cenk responded to your exit from TYT? He kind of did it we compared it to a Trumpian manner, right? And I often have drawn some parallels between guys like Cenk Uygur and Jimmy Dore and Donald Trump, these hyper narcissistic figures that cannot tolerate dissent, cannot tolerate anything that they view as a lack of loyalty, but will then turn around and justify any kind of abysmal behavior that they go ahead and put forth into the world as justified for whatever reason they have. So were you surprised that he kind of tried to come across as an alpha dog, even though he was losing subs left and right? He'd had his lunch eaten. People were totally with you. Or is that something you kind of saw coming because of what kind of guy Cenk is?
I actually didn't see that coming. I thought I was going to get a call from that guy like immediately, like, yo, bro, you call me brother. Like, I'm confused because I don't understand that. So I'm really frustrated with that process. But my frustration really came from the otherizing, and in that way he is like Trump. The minute you stop saying what Trump said or what Trump believed, then you become the other. You become a dumb general. You become a handicapped veteran or a handicapped or disabled a disabled a reporter or whatever. You become the other that Trump don't like anymore. So I do see that connection. Here's what I would say about Cenk's response. It's telling, right? Like I become one of the 3 guys on a panel. Your entire main show is 3 people on a panel. So like that weak shot was absolutely crazy. Like, talk about projection. The main show on TYT is 3 people on a panel, and he called clickbaity 3 guys on a panel. First of all, you were super involved. Cenk was super involved with Bernie's campaign, so you have to know the guy in the middle, who is Marcus Farrell, who was the political director for Bernie's first campaign. You have to know Ben Dixon, because Ben Dixon was on your network, and you damn well know who I am.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it was a few months ago. You told me I should put my name on the ballot and run for president. Cenk, you would vote for me. You said that. So this idea that I become 3 guys on a panel is absolutely disgusting. But the problem is that didn't even bother me as much as Anna going into full Karen mode when she was like, "I'm so tired of the left." She said it right there. We became the other. I'm so tired of the left. I'm not dealing with them anymore. I'm not giving them space. They come on our platform and we make them big, or we make them, and then they try to leave and go somewhere else. And I'm thinking to myself, who did you make? Who did you birth? You didn't birth me. This idea that they are making people activists or they're making people left means you don't know shit about what the real work is. What grassroots work is Cenk and Anna doing? And they keep talking about that in a way where they forget that they are not the power structure. They're not the backbone or the sinew in the bone of what it means to be progressive. There are tons of grassroots organizations out here that are literally doing this work year round and do not get invited to sit at the DNC convention and interview politicians. Don't get it twisted. I love and think there's an important role for media, but when people in the media begin to think that they are the movement and that they are driving the narrative, then they've already lost themselves. And I think that's what Cenk and Anna are. They believe that they are controlling what the left is doing. They can't tell me what a win number was for any candidate. They can't tell me what a real campaign needs to win. They don't know how many doors you need to knock to turn out voters. So this idea that you are winning elections for us is scary to me.
Well, kind of hysterical also, given the fact that Cenk has such a demonstrably horrible record of running for office. I mean, he didn't even put up a fight in Orange County. Like, I don't even want to get into his like book tour presidential campaign. That was all in hindsight, just for free press and cash. But I also wanted to get your perspective on something else, Mr. Mayor. You worked with Anna and Cenk, right, at the Young Turks. Recently, Anna has launched her own Substack where she calls herself unaligned. So she's kind of tossed out the "I'm a progressive" label, right? But I thought this most recent contribution to her Substack was so shocking, a real new low, that I just wanted to ask you about it, because we played on our show a few weeks ago a clip from Anna when I think she was me and Gavin's age. I think she's about 25, 26. So it's a while ago, right? She's been doing this a long time, but she talks about how it was basically journalistic malpractice to put Glenn Beck on television because he was saying a bunch of anti-Semitic, racist, unhinged things on Fox News and riling up a really dangerous group of people who wanted to hear that shit that I just learned you've heard from in your own hometown of North Carolina after, doing your job of fucking getting rid of a conservative monument, right? She goes on his show again 15 years later to kind of launder his reputation, but then has the audacity to name her response to her critics, "I chose freedom." And she comes out here and she says, "My openness to diverse perspectives, in addition to my critiques of a few sacred cows on the left, has spurred an entire cottage industry of YouTube channels that thrive off condemning my alleged heresy." That's in reference to us. "Disagreeing with my views is one thing, but the orchestrated effort to mischaracterize me is unacceptable and sadly needs to be addressed. I recently had a civil conversation with Glenn Beck, which I'll admit I enjoyed. We acknowledged our differences of opinion, but also found areas of common ground, which I would have never predicted a few short years ago, that allegedly offended a TYT contributor to such an extent that he made a public spectacle out of quitting the network and asked our viewers to abandon us for whatever he'll be doing next. I genuinely wish him luck in his future endeavors." So I just wanted to give you a chance to respond to Anna's call out in her unaligned Substack, Mr. Mayor, where she basically throws you under the bus and says that Glenn Beck is more of an ally to her than you are.
And also that I did it for money. Like this is the heresy she's screaming about. She's projecting if I did it for money, why would I leave the money? I don't tell people to go to my YouTube channel. I probably have 30 subscribers. I put videos up so random nobody would follow me on YouTube. That's the idea that I'm doing it for money is absolutely ridiculous. Oh, whatever the next thing I'm going to be doing is disgusting, because what she didn't say was this contributor who calls a spectacle talking about me, I guess, right? What she didn't say was he's a mayor, he's a political consultant, he's also the founder of Black Male Voter Project, which is the nation's largest organization reaching Black men, which I've always been doing, which I was doing well before them. So this idea that you are upset that I'm protesting against your shift. Furthermore, here's what's beautiful. What she didn't tell the people in her Substack is that her so-called civil conversation, you call me and people on the left religious zealots. She called us religious zealots. Misaligning or malaligning people is exactly what she was doing in that post that got her fired up. I'm so this grift where you could be so wrong, get called on it, and the first thing you could do is complain as if it didn't happen is the biggest spectacle that I'm seeing from TYT. Like, and this is the frustration with how I'm so upset that I haven't heard from Cenk. I don't care if I hear from Anna. I never really had a real relationship with her. She means nothing to me in the grand scheme of things as it pertains to relationship-wise or me putting trust in her. It never happened. It never happened. If this message would have came from Rashad Ritchie, I would be heartbroken. But from her, I expect it. I expect it. She is telling me that she's telling not just me, she's signaling to the entire MAGA people that she is friendly to them. She's safe space for them now, because you're not unaligning with them. You're just telling us that you're putting a flag down to the left of where you are. You're no longer with us. Well, we've already seen that, and we're seeing it.
Yep. Oh, it's such a great point too, that how she lied about you trying to use your exit from the Young Turks to build your own platform, or to somehow, like, in a careerist sense, like in a Dave Rubin sense or something. What's hilarious actually is if you guys go back and watch the moment where Mayor Robinson quit on Ben Dixon's stream, he says, subscribe to Ben Dixon. Yeah. He doesn't say subscribe to me. You don't promote any of your own stuff at all. As you said, I don't even like you. If you have a YouTube channel, it's not like you even really post to it that much. This is not some big career pivot for you. You only endorsed your friend Ben Dixon, who, by the way, we also endorse. Everyone should definitely go subscribe to Benjamin Dixon. He does absolutely great work. And much like Mayor Robinson has been incredibly clear-eyed when it comes to the situation with Cenk and Anna. But yeah, that's just a complete fucking lie. You never endorsed your next project. You never tried to make a cent off of this. In fact, you've really only used this opportunity as an excuse to try to bolster the rest of progressive media, and in a very selfless way, honestly, in a way that's like the opposite of the sort of narcissistic bullshit that is constantly being projected by Cenk and Anna at the Young Turks, where it's, if you're against us, then you're, worthy of ostracization. You're a traitor. Yeah, you've betrayed some sort of friendship, even though we were your employers, which is crazy. And you said that Cenk tried to get you to run for president, but now wants people to ignore your words about the network and the organization, like as if someone who would be worthy to represent us in the Oval Office we can't listen to when it comes to him and his network. I mean, that's insanity.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, the people, all you have to do is just go back and just look at our interactions. And it's never been a point where I didn't, I knew I wasn't going to be at TYT long anyway, because there were some other conservative, like, people that were, a couple people that were bothering me, that I feel like are way too soft on Israel and their policies, mainly Benjamin Netanyahu. So it was always going to be that rub for me. But I think for me, what the establishment that is TYT right now is unbelievable at how they are really trying to. They're not just gaslighting me. You're gaslighting all the people that follow TYT, and everybody on that Substack who don't know me, or maybe never had an interaction with the video of me saying I'm done with TYT. You are doing a disservice to those people, because you didn't tell them what happened. Like you said, you just had to clarify something she said. You called us religious zealots. How am I? That's all I said. I said she called us religious zealots, and these people are acting MAGA-like. MAGA-like and MAGA-light. Neither of those are beneficial to the left, and that's why I stand firm. My coalition with anybody will always end when you start throwing the progressive left under the bus. When your policies and your ideology no longer align with what's going to make us equal and get us closer to equity, all of us, then we ain't in coalition anymore, and that's okay. So like I said, that's okay. But you cannot run around saying that we are in coalition, because I'm going to tell the world about you as many opportunities as I get. And it's not about financial gain. It's about what we need to build right now before Trump get in office and start getting serious about where do we offer people a pushback on what MSNBC don't seem like they're going to do. We saw their main show, and Joe and Mika say the same thing Cenk and Anna did. And I just think we need to be prepared on the political left for a real strong place to offer our peoples where to go. And they need to be able to consistently get progressive messaging. Anna and Cenk don't offer us that anymore. They don't.
Yep, 100%.
And I think they need to be comfortable and acknowledge that to the people, because they owed it to so many people who invested so much in their network. And it's also true. Francesca said it on the show with John the other day. Why are we having so many black people and trans and gay people leave TYT if it's not a problem? The comfortness of Anna and her whiteness and not being able to hear. I've had this happen to me at an organization before. One of my good friends who was the most progressive person at this organization. And I got there, and they hadn't had a black person that had been at the organization more than a year. I'm telling them what the problems is as I see them as a black person. And he's pushing back. This is a white guy from California. And he's pushing back. The organization was Democracy for America. He's pushing back because for so long he had been the most progressive person in the space. But I'm telling him, you are building a white safe space. Black people can't stay here. They don't stay here. Charlie, one of my good friends, the guy I'm talking about, couldn't see it. But when I articulated it in an entire message, and we brought in consultants, they too pointed it out, and that helped us move the organization DFA along further. Cenk and Anna aren't willing to do that. They're not doubling down at this point. They're quadrupling down on the fact that they're right, and you need to get in line if you're going to stay here. We gave their asses a pass when we should have smashed them as an entity when they were union busting. Mm-hmm. When they were union busting, we should have shut them down then. But we gave them a pass.
Do you have any insights from that time period, Mayor? Were you part of the Young Turks when all of that was going down?
I was not, but I mean, Dan on the internet, Dan from the internet was an editor over there, and he lived through that, right? Like them trying to bust unions as the progressive entity was almost as disgusting as some of the so-called progressive campaigns that were anti-union, anti-campaign workers being a part of unions. So I think what I know for sure is, while I don't need you to agree with me on everything, or even most things, you need to align with me as it pertains to my ideology. And I have a leftist ideology, and I don't play about it. So all of these people making jokes or whatever about the internet, about, oh, you did it to go viral, those people don't know me even, because all you need to do is go look at my Rebel HQ videos. I was doing 200,000-300,000 views every video. A million. I got videos with over 1 million views. I'm not bragging. I'm pointing out the stupidity in what Anna is saying, the stupidity in that this is about money and about my next move when I already had a comfortable move that didn't require
100%.
anything. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, also, it's hilarious, that she accuses you of having this religious zealotry when it comes to your ideology. In reality, you just have an ideology. That's what she means. You have an ideology that you're willing to passionately defend on principle, which at this point she is not. She has, proudly declared that she no longer has an ideology. She is unaligned and disaffected, or whatever the fuck. I'm just floating out here in the sea of thought with no clear direction. It's like, okay, well, if you're like a fucking cashier at Walmart or something, that's fine. But you're a political commentator and you have this whole audience of people that are like trying to get a perspective from you, not just like a wishy-washy, mealy-mouthed, both sides bullshit. Like, no, people listen to political commentary for perspective. And of course, she's taking that out on you because you actually do have a perspective, one that you're passionate about, one that you're committed to, and one that you actually have experience to back up. You're not just holding these positions because you feel like it, because it's in vogue. You hold these positions because they're the fucking correct positions that you and your community absolutely need to uplift your quality of life. Like, that's what it's about for people on the left. We see suffer and we see oppression, and we identify the solutions in policy. Those are the policies we champion. It's not about being woke. It's not about being virtuous. It's about helping our common fellow American.
Period. And I think if for people, I think sometimes, bro, I want y'all back up because I want to look at y'all, because in this moment, we need to share this moment together. And this moment is, I don't know if y'all heard me. I've 2.5 years, I've not slept in my fucking bed, right? For turning on a Confederate monument. I'm already 45 years old, right? I have a therapist. So I'm dealing with the epigenetics of being Black in America and what it means. But I went back home to run for mayor in one of the poorest towns in America. Forbes magazine said Enfield was the 8th poorest town. 93% Black, 8th poorest town, right? So in the poorest town in North Carolina. And in the middle of one of the only parks in that town, there was a white-only statue. And people that don't understand epigenetic trauma, it's trauma that's passed on to you from your ancestors. Maybe you've never experienced it, but you still have PTSD from it. So I put on that Confederate monument in hope that no Black kids or any other kids that have to deal with what it means to support or be a part of a system that supports enslaving people based on their race would have to look at it. In the middle of the park, 10-foot statue. And my wife has not slept in her bed in 2.5 years. We are moving around to protect ourselves regularly, right? People. So when I hear people like Anna talk about, I'm basically doing this as a grift, moving to the next thing. What next thing? I can't have a regular relationship with my mom and dad because when I go out there, I put them in jeopardy when I go to their houses, right? So I have to go to town with security who sits in my car while I'm in a town meeting, then I have to drive back to wherever I'm hiding at for 2.5 years. And it ain't for money, for $500 a month. And I always give that money back to the employees of the town. So this idea that I'm a grip, or it don't really matter, or I'm kind of a religious zealot, I am a zealot about fucking equity. And I thought she was too. And now all of a sudden, she's Walter fucking Cronkite. Now you don't have a personality. She's unbiased media all of a sudden. You can't come up on the scene as a progressive. You can't make that much money as a progressive. And now all of a sudden, when you get called about throwing some of us who we were supposed to be fighting for under the bus, you can't get there's nothing progressive about that. In actuality, it's regressive. We saw the same thing with the so-called progressives in Florida. And I worked on this amendment. Amendment 4 was supposed to give people the right to vote, people with felony convictions. But we threw part of the people under the bus. People who had murder convictions or people who had other types of charges, they weren't included in getting their rights restored. And what did Ron DeSantis do? He took that 60+ majority that voted for that amendment, threw it out the window and said, you still got to pay fines. So none of those people got the right to vote. So why are we sacrificing people as if it's good? And I'm not willing to do that. And I don't really give a fuck. People that say, oh, you got to pick your battles. You don't know my life. Me picking battles caused me to have nightmares at night. And that's not hyperbole. My mom was sprayed with a water hose when she was 8 years old for being downtown past the time when Black people could be downtown in the town where I'm mayor. And my mom is still alive. So every time I don't stand up for somebody that's smaller or less or otherized than I am, I feel like I just sold my mom out. And I'm not willing to do that for Anna or anybody else.
Mr. Mayor, it's almost hard to find the words to respond to that because we've obviously never had to deal with the gravity of the situation that you're in. And I want to make sure that everybody in chat and everybody that's watching this really marinates with the gravity of what you just articulated for all of us, because it is so real and it's so removed from everybody's everyday experience if it's not part of your everyday experience. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you painted it very vividly, right? This is raw. This is real. This is a fight that is being fought. And then you think about all of the resources that have been drained from people who thought they were fighting that. I read all of our YouTube comments because I'm not fucking afraid of them. And most people are really, really nice. And I love the people that listen to us. And one day, the other day, I was scrolling through the feed and somebody said, I'm really grateful you guys brought up that studio. And I think it was you that put that in our mind, that they'd financed. I don't know if it was you. Maybe it was somebody else. Somebody else had put it out there that they'd financed an entire studio off of the backs of people. And it was fresh on our mind. And so we were like, yeah, that's fucked up. $400,000 could do so much in this country, feed a lot of people, keep a lot of people warm when it's cold outside, etc. These people thought they were participating in sustained change that was going to overhaul our media apparatus and put somebody like Bernie Sanders in the White House. They have sucked up all of these resources, and then because of greed, because of their isolated bubble, because it's all a game to them, it was all just a performance that they were going to come on and do like a play. They were being a character every night when they went on here. But this lady, she says, thank you for saying this, because my parents and I didn't have a lot of money, but we really believed in TYT, and we both gave money to this fucking studio. And it breaks my heart every time I hear him call it Poly Market Studio, because it was supposed to be the People's Studio. It was supposed to be the People's Studio at the Young Turks, where they were going to facilitate change. And a lot of people have lost hope over the last 6 years because they've seen the supernova effect of Bernie Sanders. I rode that entire roller coaster myself, right? I go from being 18, all the hope in the world. Gavin and I talk all the time about how the night of the Nevada caucus may be the most hopeful we've ever been in our entire life in 2020, right? And so many people don't know if they'll ever feel that hopeful again. What you've said has been tremendously inspiring, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering if people are looking for something tangible that they could take away from that message you just gave them about the reality of our world. What's one thing you would like to see them implement in their lives just after they turn off this interview, after they go back to engaging in the world again? How do you carry these values? How do you carry these ideas and practice them and walk that walk once we're no longer just engaging with media?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think we need to engage with ourselves more. Like, I think if people disconnected a little bit and gave a part of their day to themselves, figuring out my therapist is responsible for a lot of what I deal with and how I stand up. And I think if people spend more time trying to figure out what they're really passionate about, who they're really passionate about, and how they learn more about them, especially if it's not themselves. But if you're really passionate about yourself and that's the only thing you want to fight for, then you're on the wrong side anyway. So I think for me, I would tell people, figure out how to engage with organizations, not just media organizations on personalities, but just organizations really doing work in your town. I hear so much from so many people so often that nobody is doing anything. And that is a narrative that is created. That is a narrative that is created by the internet, because it's so many people like that family, that mother and daughter who didn't have it to give, but they still gave it because they believe, right? It's so many organizations that can't afford to pay a canvasser year round, and they just have to pick them up. If they had more volunteers, they can expand their reach. Find out where those orgs are in your community that are really doing work to engage folk and change people's lives, and figure out how to get piped in and typed in. Because I think for me, what revolutionized me was my childhood. Like, right, my mom and dad's story was enough to keep me going. Like it's like 1,000 suns. So that's for me. Most people, thank God, most people didn't have to live and come up the way that we did. But I still think that people still can learn how to find their true selves in whatever they care about, and get serious about it by getting involved and just pulling away a little bit, not too long from the vanguard, but pulling away so that you can really, realize who you are.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. I always advocate that people spend more time by themselves, with themselves, in solitude. So many people seem terrified of that notion of having to spend even a couple hours in their own mind with their own thoughts. And personally, I can't really relate to that. I've always enjoyed spending time alone. I'm a little bit more introverted, perhaps, than your average person, but I totally agree with that. I appreciate you saying that. I totally urge everyone take that advice. My last question for you, Mayor Robinson, is again about Cenk and Anna, and it's about redemption, right? Because we're all on the left, we're all humanists, and I am interested in your opinion. Is there a possibility for a redemption arc with Cenk and Anna? Is there a possibility that the Young Turks could still learn from their mistakes and actually double down, become the progressive network that we all wanted them to be, that they promised us they would be? Because I don't want to be naive or anything, but I do want to offer that path to them, at least as far as it's in our place to do so. I wanted to see if you agree with that, or if you think it's completely too late. But would an apology to you, would an apology to the progressive community, would it go some ways if that were to come in a sincere place from Cenk and Anna? If they said, I apologize, we did throw you under the bus, we did attempt this, it was rejected by our audience, and we're going the opposite way now. Would that mean anything to you, or is it too late?
Yeah, I definitely think, I'm sorry about that, y'all. I definitely think, listen, redemption has to be a part of everybody's story if they're working towards it. For me, I don't need an apology for them. I think what they do know, that they do owe the progressive community writ large an explanation, and a real explanation. They need to sit down and answer hard questions with somebody like you all, or Ben Dixon, or a combination. And they need to be honest, like, hey, we shifted. This is where we are now. We are no longer trying to be the vanguard of left media, right? We've moved on to become something more that looks like mainstream media, in hopes of trying to gain dollars, because they can no longer say that they have their standing in the gap as it pertains to progressive values. They're not showing us that. And if they're trying to get back there, they need to be honest about that, and they need to be open to critique. And like I said again, that explanation is not owed to me. The explanation is owed to the progressive side, to people who invested for far longer than I've invested in them, and also for people who've been around with them and they've also wronged way before they wronged me. So I think that's the truth. That's the true measure if they can be redeemed or not. Sorry about that.
Oh no,
it's all good.
You're fine.
Yeah, and I mean, I definitely share everyone in chat skepticism. I don't think that there's going to be a redemption arc, but I'm not going to lie. I do want to see Cenk and Anna apologize, not just to the left, but to you, Mayor Robinson, to Emma Vigeland, to Sam Seder, to all these people that not only have been valuable members of the left-wing media ecosystem in their own right, but also people are still doing it. So and I didn't mean to interrupt you, brother, but if you think about it, there's some people that left TYT because they weren't as progressive they used to be. Those people are still out there fighting and grinding. And I think it is wrong for them to come for those people when those people's priorities have not shifted. The only shift is Anna and Cenk, and they're not being honest about that. And I think that's problematic. That doesn't show me that you're being progressive at all. And I think that to me is problematic for sure. Yeah, 100%. Well, like I said, I hope to see that apology to you and the other people that they've just frankly, display disgusting, unprofessional behavior towards, even if you just remove it from a moral sense or a left-wing sense. Like, this is a company that has employed lots of people. Like, it's just unprofessional the way that they talk about people that have left their organization, when those people have in fact been quite classy, like more than they probably should have been. A lot of the people that have left TYT, yourselves included, you did it in a very classy way. You made it about the substantive issues, said this is what's going on, this is why I'm leaving, I can't be associated with this anymore, it's no longer in line with my values. But that's everyone's right. We're all adults. Like, what the fuck? And they're the ones that then turn around and act like everyone else is being sissy or crybaby or engaging in cancel culture, when they're completely incapable of defending their own beliefs in a good faith setting, in a debate setting. But I guess isn't
it funny how they care about? Well, I think the new Substack is called "I Chose Freedom," but the viewers who leave are not. The subscribers who choose to leave are not choosing freedom from her. Right. Like, so she's got a problem with them choosing or having freedom to make a decision, but she wants us to respect hers. It's that type of craziness for me.
Yeah. wanting your cake and eating it too. And honestly, just being a self-centered asshole is what I would call it. We have an old-fashioned term for it. It's just being a selfish prick, putting, you're stacking the deck for yourself, etc. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for your time today. It was an absolute pleasure. Shout out to Ben Dixon for helping us facilitate this connection between the two of us. We have an entire 4 years of Donald Trump where we have to rally against it. We have to be the opposition. We are all going to band together and be a new home for progressives. So be sure, if you can, support folks like Mayor Robinson, support folks like Ben Dixon, support all of the fine people who have said the hell with your, ridiculous pivot to the right, the hell with your decision to run to the center. We're holding the line on the left over here. It was an absolute wonderful time. And just thank you for sharing your perspective and sharing your experiences with our audience. It was very, very valuable for all of us.
Yep.
Indeed. Thank y'all so much. Peace, y'all. Y'all be great.
Thank you very much, man.
Shout out to you. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Look out the door if you hear an ambulance. The Vanguard will be there.